Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a Treasury Corner organized by the Hellenic Association of Treasurers. This is the first in a series of webinars supported by the Open Treasury Initiative, a collaboration among the National Treasury Associations of Croatia, Greece, Hungary, Romania, and the Czech Republic. We are very pleased to host this session today in Athens at the OTE Academy premises, and we thank you all for joining. I am Elisa Milona, OTE Group Treasurer and Head of the Customer Finance Unit. But today I'm here to host this session in my capacity as Head of the Corporate Finance and Risk Management Working Group of the Association. Before I introduce our speaker, let me say a few words about the setup of this session. We will start with a presentation of approximately 40 to 45 minutes, during which all participants will be on mute. We will then have approximately 15 minutes for questions or discussion. During the questions and discussion stage, you can use the raise hand button in the WebEx, and we will ask you to unmute your line. And now, let me introduce our speaker, Dimitris Tsatsanis. Dimitris is not a treasurer, but he is the closest species to our tribe. He is the head of mergers and acquisition at OTE Group of Company, a dear colleague of mine. He has worked in a number of milestone M&A transactions over the last few years. Dimitris, thank you for being with us today.
Hey, hi, Elisa. And thanks for having me here. And a big hello to everybody joining the session. Well, I really enjoyed talk about M&As, and not only because thanks to them I pay my bills, but also because I find them really fascinating. Take, for example, the old stories about Elon Musk and the potential acquisition of Twitter, and if that ever happens, what the implications can be in the media and in the economy and in democracy in general. This year it was another big deal about Microsoft acquiring Activision. It was a big headline, 75 billion acquisition. But actually, what was most important is that it marked the Microsoft entering into the metaverse. That's a new trend. Or Nike, talking about metaverse. Elisa, you can buy digital sneakers and wear, when you go out to metaverse. So that's what actually Nike tried to do. So he bought a smaller company, creating digital sneakers and collectibles, and all those quite interesting stuff are really shaping companies, shaping economies, shaping societies. So we simply, I think we shouldn't ignore them. And moving next to this nice, beautiful blue bars, which show the Euro M&A market. It's multi-billion, and it has, as you can see, those peaks and valleys. Actually, they follow the economy. And look, for example, how it was in 2016, 17, 18, a big upward trend. And, in 2019, the story in a small city, Juan, where a man ate a snake, and, pandemic started, and, 2 years of stagnation. And then last year, it was a super fantastic year for M&A deals. So actually, years were aligned. So we had excess liquidity and governmental support and high growth. So really, deals reached a record high number. It hit 5 trillion for the first time around the globe. So what could possibly go wrong after this fantastic year? I think that the story with Mr. Putin, and now everybody's nervous how this story will end up, and how if the global economy will recover, and of course what will be this impact on M&A news, deal flow. And of course, economy is cyclical. So unless we have a new nuclear war this year or next year, I think it's reasonable to expect that M&A will rebound. And actually, the typical question is why companies should go for an M&A. There are a couple of reasons there. I mean, I just mentioned 8. Number one is, of course, inorganic growth, expand in a new market faster, less execution risk, and you also acquire the customers. You don't start from square one. That was case of Wind and Nova, typical Greek examples. Same is for number 2, expand geographically. What OTE did with Rom Telecom, we were lacking knowledge of Romanian environment, so we simply went for acquisition. Number 3 reason, repair severe competition in the market, where there's a high number of competitors where some of them are lacking the scale, so it's simply not viable for them, and the market is consolidating. Or companies could even go for vertical integration. Number 4, you simply acquire your supplier or your distributor. What we did a few years ago with Germanos stores, and actually it's quite it's a trend this year, with Ukraine and pandemic, that logistic companies are becoming targets for other industries, car manufacturers or fresh food producers. In order to safeguard, the logistics and the distribution, they go for this kind of acquisition. Reason number 5, synergies. You can simply enjoy synergies on the cost side. The more overlapping the companies, the better. Or you go with on the revenue side synergies. The more complementary, the better. Reason number 6 is acquisition of technology and expertise. Also quite usual those days, due to lack of talent or expertise in, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, you name it. You simply go to acquire a company just to find, experts. You can also go for opportunism or empire building, as I said before, about Elon Musk building an empire in different sectors, car, space, social media, crypto, all kind of industries. Also, another reason could be really you're in a distressed situation or for ESG reasons. So last year, 2021, was a high volume year for Turkey. For bad reasons, actually. It was due to suffocation of Turkish lira. They couldn't simply service their debt, and they were sold. Or on ESG, another new thing, people go and buy other smaller companies to acquire green technology, or they sell, spin off other entities to improve their ESG score. So this is increasingly becoming more important. And that's the typical M&A process. I mean, all those M&A deals are a result, as you might imagine, of a willing seller and a willing buyer, in the end, shaking hands, agree that, we have a deal. And they usually follow this process. It's 9 steps. It's approach, initiation, company valuation, incremental value, and then they structure the deal. They finance the deal. Here you are. Agreement. Then they move to sign to completion. That's another step. And then post-completion, what happens? That's a lengthy process. It takes, I've never seen something smaller than 6 months, but it can take 1 year, even longer. And really, depending on which side of the fence you're sitting, you can run a buy-side transaction or a sell-side transaction. Of course, there is another third option. You can go for a merger or formation of a JV, where 2 parties, join forces and run together the company. Now, in my past years, I've been engaged in a few transactions. Some on the sell side. We've disposed 2 years ago Telecom Albania, and this year it was Telecom Romania. We had some buy-side stories. It was an attempt, just to name Nova, we wanted to buy it, didn't fly. And some JV, of course, business cases. And so, okay, the question is why treasurers should be involved in this process. And my answer is definitely yes. And not only in the obvious places, I mean, in financing, in fund flows, that's for sure. But, really, they need to have the big picture of the deal so they can really contribute the most, stay informed, consult team, and raise red flags where needed. Now, I'm gonna, deep dive into each and every step. Step number one, approach. For instance, in the Nova case, our board, OTE board, decided that, pay TV is growing, makes sense to stay there, it's profitable, but there is a problem. What is the big differentiator is actually the exclusive content, what makes you special. Sports rights, football, basketball. And the problem is that this is expensive and you can get it through auctions, which end up like a Rocky 3 or Rocky whatever arena where prices go off the roof. From strategic perspective, it makes sense, of course, to acquire the competitor and stop bleeding. Fine. Now, on the sell side, it was, in Telecom Albania, we had our internal reflection, and we said, okay, we're in declining market. It's small size. It's political uncertainty. Maybe it's time to step off. So after that, okay, when you make this decision, we need to check the profiling of the counterparty. So in the buy side case, we said, okay, what's the owner of the target, and check their appetite to exit. So in Nova case, we checked and we saw that the owners were burning cash. That's good for us, but actually they're not in a desperate mode, so they wouldn't go for a fire sale. And what I find important is maybe from Treasury side to get some insights, about the owner's financial status, their ability to service their debt, any street news insights. That's very important. Now on the sell side, it's equally important to identify what is the buyer's universe. Number of bidders. Is there any competitive tension between them? What's the dry powder, leverage? So in Albania, what was challenging was really to find investors having, let's say, the courage and the ability to invest in Albania. That was challenging. And again, from Treasury side, it's really important, because of the deal certainty, to get information about the ability of potential buyers to execute and to finance their transaction and to cross the line. Last point is, cater shareholders and all the stakeholders. That's a fine balance. So again, in the buy side, you usually go to Elisa and say, I have this ticket. Is it okay for you to go? And are there any problems with your covenants? Yeah. Same on the sell side. I need to inform and get aligned with what's going to be the use of the proceeds, the timing of the inflows, other needs of the group, and also check the group's covenants. And after I tick the box to all of them, moving to the real action, kick off, and say that really need to check if I want to go to a buy side. Do I want to participate in a tender, which is good, but it's a lengthy process, uncertain outcome. I don't know if I'm going to be the winner or not. And maybe I should offer exclusivity. That's another option. Or maybe I should go to a bilateral negotiation. It's more expedite, maybe better. And also need to check if this transaction requires regulatory approvals from competition, from, I don't know, telecoms, national, or maybe on the EU level. That's another thing to consider. Now, if I'm on the sell side, it's actually the same story on the opposite. So the question is, do I want to maximize my proceeds? Then I launch a tender. If I want a speedy transaction, then I enter into a one-to-one negotiation. Now, on both cases, what I need to do is to calibrate with the Treasury the need of the proceeds, the financing needs, implications, and to choose which routes to take. Now, in both cases, buy or sell, obviously, I need to do evaluation on the early stage to see what is the size of the ticket, inform the board, consult, and get the green light. And of course, I don't need to, I need to pick up the phone and inform Elisa again that,
Thank you, Dimitri.
of course, my gut feeling is that will be the size of the deal, keep it in mind. And last point, but for me it's very critical, is to a good onboarding of the transaction, all the team, all the advisors. Then I need to set up this work streams, milestones, key deliverables, A to Z. And for me, it's important for treasurers and everybody actually to have a holistic view of the transaction. Why it's important? Why? Because they can proactively prepare their resources, when they should step in the VDR, in the review, in the Q&A, review transaction documents, rather than, jump ad hoc and try to do their best. Now, moving next to company evaluation. What is there? It's what I'm trying to figure out is the value of a standalone business, but also what are the untapped opportunities and what are potential risks and mitigants. And when I go for the buy side, I follow a top-down approach. I first assess the country case risk. Also, maybe it's important, on financial aspects to check with our treasury colleagues, and then, check the sector prospects. What I usually do, is engage experts for outside-in view to challenge us, and then end up with, company-specific information, and where I get it, through various sources. But in the end, I end up with VDR, expert sessions, real due diligence. And also, what is important there is, for treasurers to participate in this Q&A, raise red flags, usually in cases where, they have expertise on cash flow, net debt, working capital, potentially any change of control clauses, and or other blind spots that, really we don't know they exist, and, they find it. And also, what is important going for a buy is, give to the seller proof of funds that we have the ability to transact. So bank statements, love letters from the banks are highly appreciated. Now, on the sell side, what we're doing is prepare a business plan for the target. That's a lengthy process, and or maybe a vendor model, another thing. And what is very important is to review and verify assumptions and all the statements. So cash flow, help in cash flow is highly appreciated. And last one is the definition of net debt and working capital for transaction purposes. That has nothing to do with the reported net debt and working capital on financial statements. Because the offer in a transaction is on an enterprise value on a cash-free, debt-free basis, as if the company didn't have any cash or any debt. Obviously, at the time that the company changes hands, it will have both cash and debt. And this definition of what is cash, what is debt, is a result of negotiation. So in every transaction, it's different. What are the building blocks? So what we start with the definition of the export in the financial due diligence, and then that's the bridge from EV offer to the equity, the real money, the EV to equity or net debt and working capital. And it's very important. It really changes the money, you get in the end. And then incremental value of the deal. So what is, the value on top? 1 + 1 = 3. And the erosion due to the transaction. So as I said before, you buy something and you expect synergies coming through revenue synergies, cross-sell, upselling, better value propositions, or on the cost side, cut duplications, economies of scale, best practices. And potentially, there are cases where we have also financial synergies, thanks to economies of scale, negotiate better terms. That's it. Now, we have also, due to transaction, value erosions coming through integration costs. We integrate, IT platforms, building relocations. There are, one-off but significant costs. And also cannibalization effects on the production, which really hit the EBITDA. Now, in the end, we end up with the synergies, and usually that's something to be shared between the parties, buy and sell. Now, the impact also on the sell side, when we sell the company, obviously we have positive impact through cash proceeds. For instance, as OTE, I can always, create a tower company and sell my towers. That helps reduce my net debt. But also on the same side, next day, I have increased recurring costs because why? I need to lease them back. So that hits EBITDA. So that's a decision to, that's a fine balance. And so both in cases of buy and sell, usually what we do is, sit next to a treasury colleague and, calculate what will be the incremental impact on cash flows, on net debt to EBITDA, on debt covenants, etc. So that's something to consider before entering into the transaction. And then that's structuring the transaction. Of course, the key component of the deal is the headline price. What is this? It's enterprise value, cash with debt-free, 100%. That's something to agree on. And the consideration can be, the plain vanilla lump sum, one single number. It can be, paid in a two-step offer, a portion day 0 and a portion in year 1. It can be a conditional offer. I pay you, I don't know, 70% now, and if really your booming assumptions in the revenue are met 1 year down the road, then I pay you the extra 30%. Or, it can be a cash and assets offer. So all those options should be, communicated to the treasury about, what are the amounts and what will be the timing that you'll get the proceeds. And also, after this, the parties by the seller need to crystallize after the enterprise value what will be the real money, which will be defined at the date of the completion. So what happens then is, net debt and working capital are moving up and down, and we need to see what will be the mechanism to lock those two or to define those moving parts. Usually the two typical ways to settle them is through completion accounts or through lockbox mechanism. And the treasury is very critical to contribute in the definition of net debt, working capital, because those two parts are really defining what will be the real money we'll get in the end. And the third bullet point is, of course, we need to agree on the escrow account. We use them for obvious reasons, for the payment at completion to have, no surprises. But also it's quite important for, break fees, in case, we have an unexpected walk away of one of the parties, after signing, we need to safeguard that this will not take place. Also, if we want to safeguard, that the gradual release of funds will take place, next day when the company is reaching some milestones. So what the escrow agreements should be, I mean, obviously they should be drafted in a way that they really work mechanically, so no decisions taken. So to avoid disputes, to avoid deadlocks, and to safeguard the smooth execution of the transaction. Now, in real life, we need to be creative, and that's another place where Elisa and her colleagues are helping us, to really put in paper the challenges of each transaction and put them in writing in the escrow agreement.
I guess in this case, you need to think in advance of the scenario that can take place and try to put them in the escrow agreement.
Exactly.
So you have to think in advance what can go wrong and have the relevant provision included.
Exactly, or deadlocks, or long stop dates, and in order to unwind the process. Yeah, you need to be ultra secure that nothing will go wrong. Otherwise, it's a nightmare. But we have good treasurers in OTE, and nothing happens. And
let's move now to the treasurer's key role in this.
That's where treasurers shine always, financing the transaction.
Moment of truth.
Moments of truth. Now, depending on when you go buying, depending on on the capacity and the risk appetite, you can always go with a 100% cash deal. Of course, I need to check the headroom, available covenants, and all the usual. But also, you can always raise debt, and at least in previous transactions, when the buyers were coming with the portion coming from debt, it was the financing bank joining the conversations, they participating in the due diligence in order to really verify if the project is viable and they will get their money back in the end. And also, they were also party of the escrow agreement in case, in the end, it's their money. In transactions, I mean, of course, we need, it's critical for financing big deals. What was the case in Greece for United Group, at least in telecom sector, buying wind. So I think in January this year, they issued a big bond, roughly $1 billion. I guess without that would never happen, the deal. And also, need some cash pooling, at the right time to be there to fund the transaction. Now, the sell side, what they're usually asking the buyers is to really upstream the excess cash of the target before completion. So, the price tag is getting smaller, easier to swallow or to finance. And of course, the seller needs to make decisions how to use the proceeds. Of course, they can always deleverage, but they can always distribute to shareholders or, fuel growth or do something else. What happened in Deutsche Telekom, I think last year, they disposed their subsidiary in Netherlands. It was a significant deal, $5 billion. And with this money, they increased their stake in Telecom US. So, money from one M&A deal to another M&A deal, probably with a higher IRR. So, use of funds.
If I may add here, Dimitris, in many cases, you have covenants in the debt documentation that oblige you to utilize the disposal proceeds in prepaying the debt, so you do not have other alternatives than that, and you may need to go back to the lenders and request waivers in order to utilize the funds otherwise. And of course, it's very important to have aligned debt documentation in that, so that you do not find yourself in the difficult position of having not aligned terms and having the lenders fighting with each other on where should we use the disposal proceeds,
That's
a tricky one.
Moment I would like not to experience. So yeah, absolutely. I'll keep my notes on the next transactions. And moving to the next point, which is the agreement of the two parties, where all the negotiation, in the end, they enter into the SPA, in the share purchase agreement. It's a big document, which of course depicts the price of the target, but also the undertakings of the parties, their limitations, and the governing law. And all this, I mean, it's very customized. It's very lengthy and difficult to read. And of course, the offered price is subject to certain conditions. It can be, as I said, a lump sum. But in case of Nova, I can say, I want Nova, but I assume that the business plan, says that you will grow. I assume you will grow because you have Champions League next 3 years or next 6 years. So in the coming auction, you have to bid, of course, and you have to buy it. And please put this money. We'll decide what will be the money in a ring-fenced special account. And in case for whatever reasons the auction goes down the road, keep it there. I need to find it. I need to buy it. Otherwise, I don't know. Maybe it's a deal breaker, or I deduct the price tag I'm giving you. So again, we use ring-fenced accounts in special conditions on the price. Another big part of the SPA are the warranties and the indemnities. And what is that? It's our promise as a seller about what's the condition of the company we are selling. So obviously we provide fundamental warranties that we own the shares, right? Or the company we're selling is not insolvent. And in case that proves wrong, we reimburse the buyer 100% of the purchase price, and usually that has a period, a validity of 1-2 years. And then of course we provide business warranties. For instance, I sell a company that has, I don't know, 2,000 mobile sites, and it provides a 98% population coverage. Fine. The buyer cannot really check it and prove it, but after getting the company, they count the sites. Oh, 2 are missing, or the population coverage is 96%. Sorry, I paid you for 98. That's a loss. They calculate. Give me back some money. So there is a big basket of money. We agree that you cover all those business warranties, and they usually have a period of 1, 2, 3 years that after completion that the buyer can ask money back. Also, they're offered tax warranties, same logic, but usually they have a longer period, 5, 6, 7 years. And also there's another part called indemnities. You might know them. Special cases like you have a court case, a big one, significant one, 10 million, and if you lose it 1 year down the road, you need to, as a seller, to reimburse the buyer. But usually in order to share the risk, and the new owner will have a skin in the game and be incentivized to really fight in the court and not pass the bill to the seller. Usually they share the risk. They share 25, 75, or it's a matter of negotiation. So what we're doing, we keep the note, and treasurers keep the note of what are the future potential payments, and when time passes, you release the provisions. You don't need to really keep money on the side. And at some point, we reach an agreement, sign a SPA, and then we release the press release, to the owners, basically. So the buyer, says that success, we bought this company, and they communicate his strategy. Why did he buy this company? What was the headline price? What is the implied transaction multiple? Was it cheap? Was it good bargain, really? EV to EBITDA, EV to free cash flow, those multiples. What are the expected synergies and implication costs to really justify that, that makes sense, right? So you find all this information in many press releases. Also in the press releases of the sell side, the sellers communicates the rationale why should I exit this market or this company? What was the selling price again? The implied multiple, that was a good sell, right? And of course, use of proceeds, what I'm gonna do with this money. Give it back to you, do something else. Yeah. And of course, that's the point, and that's the moment where change of controls are triggered. If the selling coincides with the change of ownership. If this is not the case, then we go to this sign to completion period. What was, let's say, the case for when OTE sold Telecom Romania, we agreed with Orange. And then what we did, the Orange, the buyer, was filing the SPA and all those related information to the authorities for approval. That took several months. It should be approved locally from Romanian authorities, but also from Brussels, because it was a significant transaction. And usually what happens there is, the regulator either approve the transaction or can reject it, that can also happen, or can approve but ask some remedies for the deal. So what are remedies? Remedies are, imposed to the target and to the buyer, to both, to protect the customers and ensure that, there is enough competition in the market the next day. So let's say in telecoms, what can happen is really, next day the new owner can be very dominant in specific regions, and so the regulator asks remedies. You cannot increase your prices for the next, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, or you cannot increase your market share above that level, or you should ease the entrance of a new player by, I don't know, giving spectrum or giving something else. So that costs money. So buyer and seller puts down on the paper and really calculate and quantify them and baked it in the price and split the pain. So then again, I inform Elisa that, we're gonna get this money, but guess what? There are some remedies that we're gonna pay, so please deduct that amount. And then what happens again after signing is that, of course, we still own the company and we run the company. And so there's a risk for the buyer to extract value from the target, or really to, run it suboptimally. And there are in the SPA there are specific interim covenants, so restrictions and the rules how the company should run. So obviously you cannot give bonus to your, to everybody. You cannot sign large contracts. You cannot do it, run the company in a crazy way. So those are restrictions. And also you should run it in a way that, it's well invested, it's well run. So for instance, you can say that, the budget you have in the advertising, in the marketing, or in the investments should be spent. If you don't do it and you keep the money in your pocket to extract it, then guess what? This money will be deducted from the purchase price. Or, if you really do smart thing, that maybe it's a deal breaker. Or, proceeds that are coming from disposal of assets. Again, you cannot take it, through the completion accounts. They stay in the company. It's our company. It's what we saw in the due diligence, and we paid for. That's part of the price. So again, that's interim covenants. And really, in its case, the buyer is asking different things. And also, a last bullet point is, you really need to settle all the intragroup balances till completion. It's again, we're asking help from Elisa to clean the garage because there are cases where there are really long-term outstanding receivables that, as they were part of the group, we really didn't bother. However, the buyer says that whatever is longer than 30, 60, 90 days, I don't know, outstanding, I treat it as debt. I think it's an indirect way to finance your subsidiary. So I really deduct it from the price. Also, I think it makes sense, to settle all the payables. So, if you cannot do it when you have both companies, I'm sure next day the new owner will never, pay you this money. So, usually we try to settle them. And of course, at that point, at the moment of completion, all the change of control clauses are triggered. And that's again, we need some help from treasurers and from everybody to avoid surprises.
Well, actually, the change of controls are triggered if the lenders do not like the new owners, right?
Yeah.
So it's not a must. It's an option
Of
usually.
course, of course. But at the same time, what usually they're asking the buyers is to really settle the change of control. So next day I can run the company in a smooth way. Or really, if there are extra costs, it's your costs. I mean, so again, it's a matter of negotiation.
Definitely.
It's a maximalistic way, and usually you reach somewhere in the middle.
Definitely.
And completion comes, and but the problems don't stop there. Then if we follow you get, of course, the money. It's the day when you press the button and we make some space for the money to land. That's the non-treasurers have we visually see the money coming. And but after provision, after the completion, the completion accounts period starts when the buyer usually prepares the completion accounts and sends us the bill and say that you said that the inventory would be this, but we count, I don't know, the iPhone said there are less, and those receivables are really bad debt, and payables, we found some more. And then the negotiation starts and dogfight. And when we sit on the table and really deep dive and ask for clarifications, they give them, and we go caption by caption, and hopefully we reach an agreement, or if not, we go for arbitration. That's another route, an expensive route. So as you might imagine, because all the points that we're fighting for are net debt, working capital, the earlier the treasurer participates in this process, of course, before completion, the better, because we build, we create some dry runs. We know how the situation will be. We build the arguments. We keep supporting materials because next day we don't have access to the company anymore and to the officers. So that's very critical step, and it's a costly. I mean, yeah. And then because before completion there are many work streams, and you are just one of them. After that, all the light, the spot of the light is on you, and you don't want for the wrong way to yeah. You get the message. So on the seller now, it's a moment to really run the company, and they find all the skeletons on the yeah. here and there, and or it's another nice way to trigger all the claims and get money back and reduce the effective purchase price. Usually they follow the aggressive approach and send the bills each and every day. On the other side, the seller is pushing back, and then it's another lengthy negotiation that takes years, and of course change the real price, the real cash that we got. So Treasury should be always informed about what are the outcomes, and when we can release provisions, so you really don't need to keep money for apparent no reason. And of course, there is next day there isn't for the next day we have a transition agreement agreed between the parties. So that transition agreement includes all the transition services that will be offered to the target for the next day, IT services, support functions, insurance, real estate, brand royalties. You cannot simply switch and run autonomously in day one. So that's part of an agreement, and fees are agreed, of course, in advance. So that's an additional cash upstream for the seller, and a cash outflow, of course, for the buyer. So that's something, of course, to keep in mind from a Treasury perspective. So summary of the summary. I mean, for me, it's very critical for Treasury to be on board as early as possible in order to have the full picture and to really stay close and to consult and to know the implications of the deal. I mean, what will be the leverage? What will be the FX cases? I don't know, covenants, rating implications, really stuff that, it's very important, and we'll find down the road that we don't want to put fires, ad hoc on the later stage. Of course, it's very important to offer insights about the counterparties. There have been cases where we really, just drop counterparty because evidently they couldn't run the transaction, and that information came from analysis of, from treasurers, and thanks for that. Also participate in the due diligence process, obviously in net debt, working capital, but on other aspects that the blind things, vendor financing, and really how those interplay with the business plan, and and of course equally important is to have really the commercial understanding of the negotiations, because just reading Word files doesn't make a lot of sense, and you cannot understand the rationale behind. So by understanding what are the real problems to solve, they can enable appropriate financing and offer appropriate financing structures, when, which source, repayment terms, and baked in. Of course, secure the fund flow, till settlement. That's very, very important. And the most important part for me is to join, the closing dinner we have, and receive a nice tombstone to remember. So,
well, Dimitri, thank you very much for this great overview of the process. Very condensed. I think you have shed light in all the areas where the Treasury interacts with the M&A process, and I think all the treasurers in this webinar can really relate in the first bullet of the previous slide, where you said that you need to onboard the treasurer early enough in the process. I think this is a critical parameter of success. But I will stop here and see if there are any comments or questions from the audience. Yes, Sotiris.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Tsatsanis, for your speech. I would like to ask you if you have an example or case to share with us when Treasury was engaged early in a deal and find out or caught an issue, or the other way around, when Treasury was not involved early in a deal and something material was lost.
Okay. So cut the deal. Well, no, quite openly, this never happened because, okay, that's an extreme case. But what happened is that really they shed the light on aspects that was quite complicated in, let's say, in regions where in the end, the fund of flows would be quite challenging and open escrow accounts and, KYC situations that, thanks God, we had them on board early enough, and that saved us time, because in the end, transaction. One element of success is to run it fast and smoothly. So that proved to be good. Now, what was quite challenging, and no, back to your question, when we haven't engaged them early enough, and okay, that, thanks God, was not a reason to break the deal, but I don't know if I had to go back time.